Mother Gaius Helen Mohiam knew how to plan and execute a spectacular entrance. With black robes swishing, flanked by 2 immaculately dressed male guards, and followed by her troop of acolytes, she strode into the reception hall of the ancestral Harkonnen keep. Seated at a gleaming black-plaze desk, the Baron waited to receive her, accompanied by his twisted mentat, who stood on one side with a few hand-picked personal guards. To exhibit his utter contempt and lack of interest for these visitors, the Baron wore a sloppy, casual robe. He had prepared no refreshments for them, no fanfare, no ceremony whatsoever. Very well, Mohiam thought. Perhaps it's best we keep this encounter a private matter anyway. In a strong, firm voice she identified herself, then took one step closer to him, leaving her entourage behind. She had a plain face that showed strength rather than delicacy. Not ugly, but not attractive either. In profile, her nose, while unremarkable from the front, was revealed to be overlong. "Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, my sisterhood has business to discuss with you." "I'm not interested in doing business with witches," the Baron said, resting his strong chin on his knuckles. His spider-black eyes looked the assemblage over, assessing the physiques and physical appearance of her male guards. The fingers of his free hand tapped a nervous rhythm against his thigh. "Nevertheless, you will hear what I have to say." Her voice was iron. Seeing the blustering rage building within the Baron, Peter de Vries stepped forward. "Need I remind you, Reverend Mother, where you are? We did not invite you to come here." "Perhaps I should remind you," she snapped at the mentat, "that we are capable of running a detailed analysis of all Harkonnen spice production activities on Arrakis, the equipment used, the manpower expended, compared with spice production actually reported to Choam, as opposed to our own precise projections. Any anomalies should be quite revealing." She raised her eyebrows. "We've already done a preliminary study based upon first-hand reports from our—" she smiled, "sources." "You mean spies," the Baron said indignantly. She could see that he regretted these words as soon as they were uttered, for they hinted at his culpability. The Baron stood up, flexing his arm muscles, but before he could counter Mohiam's innuendo, de Vries interjected. "Perhaps it would be best if we made this a private meeting just between the Reverend Mother and the Baron. There's no need to turn a simple conversation into a grand spectacle, and matter of record." "I agree," Mohiam said quickly, assessing the twisted mentat with a glint of approval. "Why don't we adjourn to your chambers, Baron?" He pouted, his generous lips forming a dark rose. "And why should I take a Bene Gesserit witch into my private quarters?" "Because you have no choice," she said in a low, hard voice. In shock, the Baron mused at her audacity, but then he laughed out loud. "Why not? We can't get any less pretentious than that." De Vries watched them both with narrowed eyes. He was reconsidering his suggestion, running data through his brain, figuring probabilities. The witch had jumped too quickly at the idea. She wanted to be alone with the Baron. Why? What did she have to do in private? "Allow me to accompany you, my Baron," de Vries said, already strutting toward the door that would take them through halls and suspensor tubes to the Baron's private suite. "This matter is best kept between the Baron and myself," Mohiam said. "This matter is best kept between the Baron and myself," Mohiam said. Baron Harkonnen stiffened. "You don't command my people, witch," he said in a low, menacing tone. "Your instructions, then?" she asked insolently. A moment's hesitation, and I grant your request for a private audience." She tipped her head in the slightest of bows, then glanced behind her at the acolytes and guards. De Vries caught a flicker of her fingers, some sort of witch hand signal. Her bird-like eyes locked onto his, and De Vries drew himself up as she said, "There is one thing you can do, Mentat. Be so kind as to make certain my companions are welcomed and fed, since we won't have time to stay for pleasantries. We must return post-haste to Wallach 9. "Do it," Baron Harkonnen said. With a look of dismissal toward De Vries, as if he were the lowest servant in the Imperium, she followed the Baron out of the hall. Upon entering his chambers, the Baron was pleased to note that he had left his soiled clothes in a pile. Furniture lay in disarray, and a few red stains on the wall had not been sufficiently scrubbed. He wanted to emphasize that the witch did not deserve fine treatment or a particularly well-planned welcome. Placing his hands on his narrow hips, he squared his shoulders and raised his firm chin. "All right, Reverend Mother, tell me what it is you want. I have no time for further word games." Mohiam released a small smile. Word games? She knew that House Harkonnen understood the nuances of politics. Perhaps not the kind-hearted Abelard, but certainly the Baron and his advisers. "Very well, Baron," she said simply. "The Sisterhood has a use for your genetic line." She paused, relishing the look of shock on his hard face. Before he could splutter a response, she explained carefully chosen parts of the scenario. Mohiam herself didn't know the details or the reasons. She simply knew to obey. "You are no doubt aware that for many years the Bene Gesserit have incorporated important bloodlines into our sisterhood. Our sisters represent the full spectrum of noble humanity, containing within us the desirable traits of most of the great and minor houses in the Landsraad. We even have some representatives, many generations removed, of House Harkonnen." "And you want to improve your Harkonnen strain?" the Baron asked warily. "Is that it?" "You understand perfectly. We must conceive a child by you, Vladimir Harkonnen. A daughter." The Baron staggered backward, then chuckled as he brushed a tear of mirth from his eyes. "You'll have to look elsewhere, then. I have no children, nor is it likely I'll ever have any. The actual procreation process involving women as it does disgusts me." Knowing full well the Baron's sexual preferences, Mohiam made no response. Unlike many nobles,